is there a way to third-party some of the data warehouse work and infrastructure, essentially? I gave it a bit more catchy name, outsourcing the data warehouse or outsourcing data platform. So yes and no. I mean, the thing is this: most organizations, if not all our clients at least, they consider the data platform, the database, as a strategic initiative, so that they keep it in on purpose in the organization. They would not give out everything and then leave it to a third party to absorb their data feeds and provide them everything, right? So that's not going to happen. So it's typically internal effort. On the other hand, most organizations also, they at least for the start, when they start a project like this, like when they start this new data warehouse, they essentially get external help. So they hire consultancy to help them set up the architecture, help them set up the infrastructure, help them set up the projects get going, essentially. So organize the teams, organize the roles, organize the processes. And then once they are capable of doing that, they later decide if they still need consulting firms to maybe help them, whether it's just offload some of the work. They got so many requirements, not enough people internally, so they hire consultants to get the job done, essentially. So for the beginning, I can see the value of consulting. I'm working for a consulting firm, so I can see a good value for consultancy here. That's one thing. But from an internal perspective, right? I can see a good value for when you start a project to get some external help because these consultants, they have done it over and over again, right? So they can help you to kickstart your project, essentially. That's one thing. The other thing is, in the long run, I've seen projects where more than 50% of the team members came from external parties. I find it a bit risky, to be honest. On the other hand, I can see the value of having externals, because when there's a downturn in the economy or when you have lower budget, you can kick them out first. You don't kick out the internals, you kick out the externals, which is fine to us as consultants, right? That's what it is. It's part of the business. But having more than 50% consultants, externals inside your project, there's a lot of knowledge in your heads, right? In all these heads in a team. And if a lot of knowledge is external to your team, I find it risky, to be honest. So not more than 50% is what I would say. You should have consultants, like external roles, essentially. That's one thing. So typically, organizations, they hire consultants to get the work done, but it's in the internal context. What we see, though, is, sure enough, different tools. So infrastructure, for example, most organizations don't have their own on-premise servers anymore. Everything moved into the cloud sooner or later. So yeah, that essentially outsources the infrastructure work to a good extent, like hosting all these and getting the power running and so on. This is a hobby project here, right? But you don't do this for a hobby. You want to have a cost-efficient data center, and that's typically these days in the cloud. It's more secure and so on. So that's what we see. That's also part of the game, right? So we outsource the infrastructure to one of these big providers, AWS, Google, Azure, and so on, right? So that's also part of the game. The DevOps, we see a tendency to have a lot of internal DevOps. I think we can also have external DevOps working for us. Again, you don't want to have too many of them, right? So 50-50 maybe maximum. The tools, or the way, as I see a trend, that more and more tasks will also be AI driven, for example, again, Flowbia, right? So that part of the job will be done by AI. So that's also part of offloading, right? But the definition of the reports, the requirements, information requirements, those definitions, they come from internal. The oversight of the project should come from internal. I prefer having a team management coming from the internal team, if possible, if they have the resources. So yeah, so some parts you can third party. This was a question session from a customer where they just became big enough to think about data warehousing, right? So they were on the journey, revenue-wise and complexity-wise, that they had to think about the data warehouse, essentially, data platform. And that's when this question came up. How much do we have to do internally, and how much can we externalize? How much should we externalize? Where do we get the skills from? A lot of organizations also struggle with hiring the right talent, getting the right people, having the right knowledge. So that's where also consultancy come in to fill the skill gap, essentially, right? It's also but also to train the employees, the internal team. That's what we do at Scafely. Our business model is really empowerment. So when we come into a team, the idea is that I mean, from a scale perspective, we want to push the data vault topic, but also other topics, right? But especially the data vault topic, that's our topic essentially. And we push this by all kinds of means, by webinars, by Data Vault Fridays, by books, by articles, blog articles, by trainings, but also by consulting engagements. And for us, a consulting engagement is really about like a training on the job in that sense. So we help the team members to understand how Data Vault works, to get the knowledge from our heads, from our organization, into the heads of your organization, into your people essentially. Transfer this knowledge so they can help themselves in the long run, right? When this point comes, is depends a bit on the people, on the organization. Do they have time to learn all these new skills, or are they buried in day-to-day work on the legacy system, right? That's also changed sometimes. So we teach them, we help them to build the system, but we teach them a lot. We review a lot of the work. So that's typical engagement, how it looks like with Scale essentially. So to get the skills into the team essentially, right? So external consultants can also fill the gap essentially when you have a skill gap, for example, or a resource gap, not enough people, and so on. That's the idea. So yeah, so we can outsource parts of the data warehouse. I would not, as an organization, as a client, I would not outsource the whole data warehouse. I would not give it completely away, because it's typically a strategic initiative of management. And but certainly you want to have external skills to get into the project. You want to use external infrastructure, not your own on-premise cluster here in the basement of your home or something, right? So yeah, you want to do something in this regard. But certainly we see this a lot. I mean, that's our business model. Cool. More business question, more basic business question. But if you have a question like this, use this form behind this URL, sfr.e/dvfriday. Thank you for joining us today. Remember to subscribe to our channel and activate notifications. To build a scalable design data platform, read a free Data Vault Handbook by scanning the QR code or following the link. Bye, guys.